Hello! Today we're going to continue our study of Judges, beginning with chapter 6, the story of Gideon. Now, Judges is the cyclical nature of our relationship with God, where we do evil in the eyes of the Lord, God leaves us to our own devices, we descend into a pit of suffering, we cry out to God for help, and God rescues us. So the story of Gideon, chapter 6. Again the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years he gave them into the hands of the Midianites. Because the power of Midian was so oppressive, they were probably aligned with others such as the Moabites. The Israelites prepared shelters for themselves in mountain clefts, caves, and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples invaded the country. They camped on the land and ruined the crops all the way to Gaza, and did not spare a living thing for Israel, neither sheep nor cattle nor donkeys. They came up with their livestock in their tents like swarms of locusts. It was impossible to count the men and their camels. They invaded the land to ravage it. Midian so impoverished the Israelites that they cried out to the Lord for help. There you go. When the Israelites cried to the Lord because of Midian, he sent them a prophet who said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you up out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I snatched you from the power of Egypt and from the hand of all your oppressors. I drove them from before you and gave you their land. I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not worship the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you live. But you have not listened to me." The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress, where he was basically hiding in a slightly cramped but more secure location. So Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "But sir," Gideon replied, "if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all of his wonders that our fathers told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and put us into the hand of Midian." The Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" The Lord is sending Gideon just like he sent Moses and just like he sends us. But Lord, Gideon asked, "how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." God likes to use the weak and the meek. And as I mentioned, this is very similar to how God calls us and sends us out to do the tasks that he has put on our hearts. And even though the task may seem beyond what we're capable of doing, God equips us as needed and does not send us into a task that is beyond our capability. The Lord answered, "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites together." Just like I said. So the Lord is with us. Gideon replied, "If now I have found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that it is really you talking to me. Please do not go away until I come back and bring my offering and set it before you." And the Lord said, "I will wait until you return." Gideon went in, prepared a young goat, and from an ephah of flour he made bread without yeast. Putting the meat in a basket and its broth in a pot, he brought them out and offered them to him under the oak. The angel of God said to him, "Take the meat and the unleavened bread, place them on this rock, and pour out the broth." And Gideon did so. With the tip of the staff that was in his hand, the angel of the Lord touched the meat and the unleavened bread. Fire flared from the rock, consuming the meat and the bread, which was a sign that the offering had been accepted. And the angel of the Lord disappeared. When Gideon realized that it was the angel of the Lord, he exclaimed, "Ah, sovereign Lord, I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." But the Lord said to him, "Peace, do not be afraid. You are not going to die." So Gideon built an altar to the Lord there and called it, "The Lord is Peace." To this day it stands in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. That same night the Lord said to him, "Take the second bull from your father's herd, the one 7 years old, tear down your father's altar to Baal, and cut down the Asherah pole beside it." So again, here's the evidence of the Israelites who have been off worshiping Baal and setting up Asherah poles. Both of these are references to the male and female gods, the god and goddess, that implies sexual immorality. That was part of why God was so angry with the Israelites at this time. So God calls Gideon to build a proper altar at this time and to tear down these other altars. So Gideon goes off and does this. He does it in the dead of night because he's afraid of what's going to happen to him. He's afraid of the people and the men who are, and what their reaction will be when they discover Gideon's torn down the altar. In the morning, when the men of the town got up, there was Baal's altar demolished, with the Asherah pole beside it cut down, and the second bull sacrificed on the newly built altar. They asked each other who did this, and after some careful investigation, they discovered it was Gideon, son of Joash. The men of the town demanded, "Joash, bring out your son. He must die because he has broken down Baal's altar and cut down the Asherah pole beside it." So the people of Israel are so mad that they're ready to kill a fellow Israelite over the destruction of an altar to another god. So this is another example of apostasy, the abandonment of their religion. But Joash replied to the hostile crowd, "Are you going to plead Baal's cause? Are you trying to save him? Whoever fights for him shall be put to death by morning. If Baal really is a god, he can defend himself when someone breaks down his altar." So that day they called Gideon Jerub-Baal, saying, "Let Baal contend with him," because he broke down Baal's altar. So now all the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples joined forces and crossed over the Jordan and camped in the valley of Jezreel. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, summoning the Abiezrites to follow him. He sent messengers throughout Manasseh, calling them to arms, and also into Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, so that they too went up to meet them. Gideon said to God, "If you will save Israel by my hands as you have promised, look, I will place a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there is dew only on the fleece and all the ground is dry, then I will know that you will save Israel by my hand as you said." And that's what happened. Gideon rose early the next day. He squeezed the fleece and wrung out the dew, a bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God, "Do not be angry with me. Let me make just one more request. Allow me one more test with the fleece. This time make the fleece dry and the ground covered with dew." That night God did so. Only the fleece was dry, all the ground was covered with dew. So it's very interesting that Gideon keeps asking God to prove that he is who he is and will do what he says he's going to do. And God complies in each of these cases. Not to mention that all of these references to the angel of the Lord also seem to be references to the Lord. So this is considered possibly what's called a theophany, which is the embodiment of God who came and spoke directly to Gideon. So I'm not an expert in that area by any means, but certainly take the time to read Judges chapter 6 for yourself and think about it. We will continue with the study of Gideon, but I think this starts off with yet another excellent example of God calling someone to go do a task and empowering that person to do the task. And in the next study, we'll talk about Gideon's defeat of the Midianites. Have a blessed day. Bye.